Hello. I love the two hellos. I don't know why. I am really excited today because I am joined by Selina. And I met Selina, and I'll let you introduce yourself properly in a moment, by slobbering down her arm
Yeah, yeah.
in a rehearsal space at the Actors Temple. We both met each other. I've trained in Meisner, so Selina, it's an acting technique about being very honest about who you are. It's a very open, direct process. And what's quite important for me as an actor and as a spiritual person and as a healer is that it's about the eye to eye contact. And so it's that, what can I see in you that's reflected in me? And when I first came to it, it felt terrifying. I'd worked in an office, I'd worked in casting, and then it was just like, let's open up and explore something deep. And then later, when I did eye to eye healing work in angelic Reiki healing, I saw my past life, which is my first play, Killed as a Witch. So I met Selina and I thought she looked like a goddess, like of the ancient past. That's what I saw when I looked in your eyes. I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then for
Yeah,
some reason, we ended up crying and I slobbered down your arm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we've worked together loads since. But
Oh,
what I'm really excited about today is announcing that we will be doing Untold Stories Scratch. So it's the first Scratch Night 5D Theatre's hosting, and it's hosting on V-Day for the Bread and Roses Theatre, which is something I feel very passionate about. I've done V-Day events with them before. For people that don't know what that is, Eve Ensler, an amazing playwright who wrote the Vagina Monologues, is very much about this day being to end violence against women and girls and to just raise awareness around domestic abuse and also, yeah, give women a voice. And so this was particularly poignant to me because of my story, which I'll talk about in a minute, your story, and we've got another story with Sarah, and they're all very focused on untold stories. So let's dive in there. Selina, tell me a little bit about yourself and also your story.
yes. So, my name is Selina Armoudon, actress, writer, producer. Like Cheryl, we're a juggler of lots of hats, workshop, facilitator, holder of space. Um, s- we have a similar background that we started in the corporate world.
Mm.
So my
Yeah, if you could
background.
call casting director corporate, I
No, maybe
yeah.
not. Mine was very corporate.
Yeah.
I worked within policy and training within a local authority. So I used to do things. That was what my first degree was in, criminology and social policy. And I used to write and deliver training courses. I used to look at legislation and how it would adapt and change things in the way that people were working. Um, and I hated it. I used to. I'd always wanted to be an actress, and I did it as a child and then did a different degree because, like most Caribbean households, it was not a proper thing to do an artsy degree. And then when I was in the job, I used to do it and do different things, but I was so miserable. I used to go into the disabled toilets. I'm sure those of you can relate and cry in the disabled toilets. Sometimes I'd cry at my desk discreetly. Uh, I just was so miserable, so unhappy. I was not allowing myself to be who I was and not allowing my creativity to come out. And it was only when I took that leap of leaving, and it was to do different training because I'd done different training, and then I'd immerse myself in Actors Temple as well, like you, Meisner, and other things that I did, is that I really was like, oh my God, I can do all of these things that I thought I couldn't do, I could.
Yeah.
And it was such a
And what stopped you being an actor from, if you wanted to do it as a child, what stopped you apart from, and I had the same, I'm working class background, people with my background didn't do this sort of thing. But do you think there was also something in you that stopped you?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. like all of us, it's that whole aspect of, and don't get me wrong, all industries have light and dark, and we know we've spoken about that. This industry has light and dark, but it was that I'm such a feeling, empathic being that I was worried about how I'd navigate this, the rejection of being judged based on how you look and how you like not necessarily seeing you as the whole person. And then ultimately, like most women, going back to the thread of V-Day, is not feeling good enough. Of
Mm.
living in a patriarchal society and believing you have to look a certain way, you have to do things a certain way, and not um, thinking that I had permission to do it.
Mm. Yeah, I asked that because I was doing Bedford's Got Talent last night, got up and performed my three poems, and someone came up to me at the end, this lovely girl, and she said, "I'm coaching this little boy to be an actor, and I'm going to send him a video of what you just did to inspire him to
Yeah.
be that brave and to also get acting technique." And it was a lovely moment because I often don't think of my acting as giving back because it's my first love. And that moment was like, she said, "I just want you to know the ripple effect because your performance is going to inspire him to be better and him to learn the craft through watching what you did." And I said to someone else, because they were like, "Oh, that it was a really talented performance. You're a real actor." And I just said, "Well, now I care less about me. I try and think this is about somebody else, but
Yeah.
I also do it for Little Shares." They were
Yeah.
like, "What?" And I was like, "That's my name, Cheryl. I call her Little Shares,"
Yeah.
because she didn't get up to perform at all. Like it would like get up, I got nothing to say. I can't say it. I'm too scared. I'm too scared. And I saw a lot of people go through that last night, getting up and being
Mm.
really, really scared. And it's incredibly courageous to get on stage and to also get on stage, not only as a performer, but when you've written the words.
Just so many things that you said resonated about that, the little shares. I've been doing different work with my inner child, and my nickname as a child, because I used to look like her, is Miss Piggy from Sesame Street, minus the blonde hair, and then it's honoring that part of yourself, and that definitely when I got into the industry and I realized it wasn't about me. It's far bigger than me. It's about young people or anybody seeing that part of themselves in you. So whether it's a young black female, whether it's going to be um, a man or whoever it is, whatever that nerve that hits them and then brings you together, I realize it's far bigger, and that's why my story. Um, it is a comedy play, a darkly comedic play, called, it's a working title, by the way, Trauma, Bondage, and it's about intergenerational trauma
Mm,
because there's so many things that are happening around the world, and like here, and even in my own family, the unspoken truths. So to provide some context, my mother was born out of an affair. Not everybody, a few people lied about it for quite a long time. Um, and it was only through my mother's perseverance and my own, as to why certain things came out. Um, and it's those untold stories
mm,
that happen and have a ripple effect in all families, because I know I'm not the only family. There's loads of secrets in my family, huge amounts. Some we know, some we don't.
mm,
But I feel like these unspoken truths and these unspoken wounds and secrets really can be quite toxic and hold back future generations because they don't know why they're doing certain things. Um, it's been proven by epigenetics, a study of how people's genes get turned on and off based on something, an event that's happened. And they've seen it in Holocaust survivors, they've seen it in people, the indigenous communities, whereby they're more predisposed to alcoholism or abuse or like things like that. So it's a huge thing, and it's something that I feel very passionate about.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with someone the other day that was talking about this, and
Mm,
he comes from has just like Jewish in his background. He has Holocaust survivors in his family line, And he was saying about the studies that were done because around the world, quite a few of the populations had been put on like kind of starvation. They
Yes.
hadn't been given any food. And they'd actually done tests on the women that were pregnant at that time, that those children grew up with diabetes at a really
Yeah.
high percentage because they were so used to not having that same amount of food that they couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And so it's like what that does. I actually said to him that what I find fascinating from a soul's perspective is we've got this epigenetics and people saying what's going through family lines, but then what's happening with the soul interests me because I work a lot with soul trauma, witch wounds, wounds from past life, very severe persecution. What does that mean to you in this day when you get up and speak your truth? How do you feel silenced from being silenced throughout the ages? But also, what lineage did you go into? You
Yeah.
know, when was I? You know, what different races was I? Was a different sex? You know, what part did I play in this big tapestry?
Mm,
And so it feels to me there's a level of scaling out of epigenetics and going, well, what's the soul carrying?
yeah.
It's the soul carrying in and through. And so I know that you work quite a lot with healing work to bring your
Mm,
work through. You've done your own healing journey.
mm.
What's your feeling about that through your own lineage and beyond, I want to say?
So do you mean my journey in relation to healing and writing this story or?
Yes, that, and also that perspective of there is something carried through your own family line, but then also what's the bigger perspective of the soul lineage?
Yeah. So to look at the healing and the writing, the first part is that I would say they come in hand for me. You've got to for me personally, if I haven't done the work, I can't write about the things that I'm going to write about because they're real and they're breathing. And I believe these stories come to you for a reason. It's not my story, it's everyone's story, and it's come from me for a reason. It's for me to honor it and do it justice as much as I can.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's that part. I'm trying to think if there's anything more to say on that. Yeah. And then the second part of your question is the soul's journey. Yes, that's huge. And I'm still understanding it because we have our soul family, which sometimes might not even be our biological family in this lifetime. Um, but I feel like it's something that we get within ourselves, is that those moments that you have of stillness and that you're able to layer back from all of the things that we hear, things that we're told, that we read, that we see around us. I feel like it's something really personal, and you can get to your soul's journey, to your soul's understanding when you have that moment of stillness and yeah, you just tap in. I don't know how to describe it. I don't feel like I'm describing it very well, but I know that you can tap in and align to that, and it normally comes to you. So I'll give you an example from my own life, is that there's been different things happening personally. A friend um, passed away because, well, unfortunately, her life was taken away by somebody that she was secretly dating. Um, and it's understanding that her life had a meaning far bigger than she even knew.
Mm.
That when I do feel very emotional about it, so excuse me. Uh, when she was in this life, like all of us, she obviously didn't feel worthy because if she did, she would have never been with such an abusive partner and then hid it. But even understanding the journey of what he's a troubled individual, because the way that he did it was a really horrific way. Um, that his journey of that, then he took her life and the ripple out effect it's had on everybody, from her family to her friends to people that probably didn't even know her very well. She was a secondary school teacher and she touched many people's lives. But when I've meditated and tapped in, it's that she realized on how important she was, and how that by her passing, it's had we've all just been like, how can we honor her? Her name was Gemma. How can we honor Gemma? How can we do different things, and how can we put different stories out there? How can I help women feel better about themselves? I'm running some workshops coming up for some women, like just all of these different things. So it's understanding that you do have these different traumas, but also how can we not let it define us and not be a victim?
Mm.
And how can we say, okay, and it's not done overnight, don't get me wrong, definitely not. But after you've healed, after you've done the grieving, because I'm still grieving over it. After you've done and you've cried and you've asked all of those questions, how can you start saying, what am I going to learn from this? What is the bigger picture? What can I do with these feelings? Am I going to put it in my writing? Am I going to help other people? Is it going to be used as a warning for other people? And also, I feel like it's don't get me wrong, the violence against women is huge, and society has perpetuated that through so many messages, through songs, through films, through books, but also how we have also perpetuated unhealthy relationships whereby then women also take that role and are violent against men.
Mm.
And it's just this horrible cycle of not having healthy partnerships and understanding that you're two divine beings coming together and you just want to love each other in all of your beauty, whether that's that you have faults or that you don't have faults, and then how you can navigate the world together, not one person always doing more than the other, together, and create something beautiful in the world, whether it's going to be a child, whether it's going to be a business, whether you're just going to help each other and thrive and do your own individual thing. Um, yeah, I feel like that there's huge amounts.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that because it brought me back to the moment where, so I applied for this scratch night
Yeah.
before your friend was murdered. And then we were sitting in the car going to a static dance in your car. And well, then you told me about it. And I just remember feeling, because a lot of people know I work as a psychic medium as well. So I don't, whether someone's in this world or outside this world, or whether it's their soul
Yeah.
speaking to things all in all dimensions, spirit, souls. And I felt her energy come in. And I just said to you, we're going to get this scratch night
Yeah.
because it's going to be in her name, whether it's said explicitly or not. Um, because these untold stories is kind of such a big part of why we both do the work that we do. For
Yeah.
you particularly, you've done a lot of work and held your own scratches about the untold Black stories that you're like, these have been lost out of our history. And know you feel quite passionate about that.
Black and brown to
Black and
honor my
brown.
Indian heritage as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me. And I feel very passionate about the spiritual voices that are silenced because people aren't speaking to spirits. People don't even know that they can. That, as I said to somebody last night when she said, thank you for being an old soul. You just
Yeah.
radiate in the room your oldness. And I was like, you wouldn't think that was a nice person thing to say to someone, but I'm actually really touched. You're so old. And I was like, but she's like, but you get what I'm saying. And I was like, no, no, I'm really glad you can see that radiating off me. She was like, I can see it because of the mission work that you do. She said, as soon as
Yeah.
you talked about 5D theatre, I was like, oh my God, she really cares about this earth and what we're doing. And then she said, and the bravery for you to tell a story about your past life trauma. And I
Mm.
said, I got to the point, and I think this is what you were saying about your friend, that I got to the point where I was like, when I was killed as a witch and I saw that past life, I was hung up to dry all by myself. And No, I didn't have a burial. I didn't have an honouring. I was just left, and everyone turned against me and hated these people, these what they deemed as witches. Hated them. They were seen as the devil. So, and we know this happens again and again in society, othering people and seeing them as evil, or, we're so taught to hate each other. It's madness,
Yeah,
madness. But I said I wanted to tell the story in the end just to honor her, that person I was, to
yeah,
say, I care.
yeah,
And I guess that's, the ripple effect that your friend, if we see it from a perspective of chose that really brutal ending on a soul's perspective, that no one should ever go through that. But
no,
maybe that's the teaching that she really wanted to bring through, that this has to change. And
yeah,
so I find it's the biggest, bravest souls that take on that that kind of mission. And I can't help but think that she was an old soul too.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's a huge call, like you said, to go in such a horrific way. And um it's been really in when I meditate and have my moment of stillness and my prayers in the morning, it's how can I honor those those women. My grandmother was that woman. My grandmother's
Mm.
there's so much unhealthy relationships and abuse in the family. Um, and I remember this is my Jamaican grandmother saying to me that when she came to this country and her first job was in a factory making underwear. And they used to make knickers, and she would hear the other English ladies speaking. Uh, and my Jamaican grandma was a tiny little lady, very hugely spiritual, so beyond this world. But at that time, she didn't really recognize it, and she just was really timid. And then when she used to listen to the English women, she'd call them the English women. And I have images of them in my head. And she was like, they were like, say all this different stuff. And then she realized how unhealthy her relationship was by hearing these other women talk about what their husbands did and what they didn't, because she didn't know. If you don't know what you don't know. And she didn't realize until hearing these women that, oh my God, this isn't normal.
Wow.
This is not what is meant to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not to place blame or hate anyone. It's to understand this is a perpetual cycle in so many people's family, whether it's unhealthy relationships, whether it's addiction to alcohol or drugs or love or sex or any of these different things. Maybe you're more predisposed to something compared to someone else and you don't even realize it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to hold on your Nan for a moment, because she's such a magnificent soul and such a spiritually tapped in person. And I know me and you have done some prayer circles with her energy in. I know she
Mm.
sends messages to you a lot. And I know that you don't talk about it much, but that you're a very gifted medium. And I'm going to make you talk about that, because I'm a spiritual theatre company.
You're gonna make me come more out of the spiritual closet. Yeah. So my grandmother, my Jamaican grandmother, was a healer. She did Reiki before I knew what Reiki was. She was the original OG, bless her. This tiny little, like I said, this tiny little Jamaican woman, so unassuming, you'd never know. But you'd know when you were in her company. God, that woman, you'd walk into the room, she would walk into a room and you could feel it. She'd radiate love. Um, and she used to speak to people that had passed away and she just knew things. And then she passed away, I think 5 or 6 years ago. Um, and she'd always said that I'd always know I have her gifts and I'd always knew that and I would use some of it, but never like been trained towards it. And then as she was passing, although we didn't know she was passing at that time, she'd always say, when I die, someone's going to do what I do or do like And I'm like, no, I don't do what you do exactly. I do it in different ways. Um, so yes, I do healings, but not in a traditional sense that people pay me to, like, if I know someone's unwell, I'd like send them healing in my morning meditation or something like that. And um, you've known from when your father came through to me, and I was like, oh, because I haven't had really proper training, I sometimes doubt when things come to me, but more often than not, it's when it does come to me, it is true. And then I will pass over messages when it feels right and hear songs and hear things and see things. And it's just, I feel like for my journey of spirituality, it's still understanding certain things and how I can use it, but I do see it as a gift, even though it's hard at times. And I know you definitely have felt that. And it's how I can use it to help other people and how I can tap in and ground myself. And it's that ripple out effect as well, isn't it? Like, I
Yeah,
don't know the effect that it can have.
yeah, and I think I was speaking to a friend we met yesterday for some food before I went to the theatre, and she's having a lot of experiences herself, and she's like, I know I can speak to you about it because nothing's going to be, I don't want to judge a thing. I said to her, to be honest, my reality now is so different. Like there will be people in the room consistently. I'm not shutting out that spiritual world at all, and I believe that's the paradigm that we're going into. So I think even some artists will sort of say to me, "Oh, I don't know whether I want to go off and train as a healer. I think I want to," and I'm like, "But your art is starting to be spiritual, even if you don't name spirits, because you are. So you're bringing that through, and together we're changing the paradigm by going, we're not going to exist in that 3D world where we're pretending that stuff doesn't exist, because." We got a super team working with us, those ancestors. As much as you can carry down trauma, you can carry down knowledge. Like my the knowledge that my nan gave me when she came through from spirit and said, don't be so afraid. You know, I wouldn't have stepped on the path that I'm on if she hadn't have broke the veil and said to me, because I was terrified.
Mm,
And she opened up my eyes and was like, okay, death's not the end. Here I am. Don't be so scared. Everything that you've been taught to be afraid of
yeah.
is a lie, basically. And that was profound. And I think that's the time that we're in, that all of us just being open to this or using our gifts is changing the paradigm. And, you don't have to do it like say, oh, I'm 5D theatre, I'm a multi-dimensional theatre company that's championing the silent spiritual voice. Like me, that's a bigger thing, because I found if I didn't do that, I was in the closet. And I don't
Yeah.
want to be in the closet anymore about
Yeah.
who I am. Like I have these, been blessed to have these memories, to have these gifts. And don't get me wrong, I've trained and honed them and worked with them.
Mm,
But also, I think even the reminder last night when I brought through all this spiritual poetry about what I'm passionate about is that I've got to the stage now where spirituality is my activism.
yeah.
Because if I go silent now and go backwards, I'm allowing society to go backwards and I'm allowing souls to be harmed. And that's what my second play is moving more into: the witch, the bitch, the whore is your angel, which I'll be sharing for the first time, even though it's been 5 years in the writing process. As we know, it's not an overnight process, but that I believe that we're going to go down an artificial agenda, which is like, let's rely on technology to entertain us, to create worlds for us, to create these meta narratives, to create the illusion of what life is. Whereas I'm deciding to step into the reality with all that multidimensional consciousness and the divine mind and the divine body temple, and go, no, 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 we can be this.
Yeah.
That is the power of who we are. Please don't choose that timeline, because that timeline is selling our soul short. And so that's why I feel so passionate about that, and why that's an untold story, because how many people tell you you're about to sell your soul down the river? And if you don't know you have a soul, how do you know that you're selling it down the river? And so that makes me feel like I have to keep speaking up in places because Spirit's shown me things for a reason and I'm not going to turn a blind eye.
No, I want to thank you for that as well, that you do just courageously just always talk about it. Because I've had these experiences like from a child, and thankfully I had my grandmother to talk to about it. But I feel like I've been more open in speaking about it, maybe in spaces that I wouldn't have beforehand. So that's a tiny little fly. Um, and and even because I run workshops or deliver workshops in all different types of companies, and I sometimes go in really big companies. And I feel like if I'm open, I'm obviously not going to start saying to people, I'm a healer, and I see people that have passed and hear them. And like, I'm not going to say that, but there's a way of saying things in and tapping in and tuning in because I'm very intuitive. And people will tell you things that you never anticipated. So I've been in settings and people have said stuff. I remember delivering a course to loads of senior people in education, and we were talking about things that we're grateful for and things that we enjoy, things that bring us joy. And then the woman who is a grandmother said to me, "Oh, my grandchildren bring me so much joy," and she was so overwhelmed that tears started to get in her eyes. And then that moment, I smelt my grandmother and felt her with me, and I started to feel really upset. And then she was like, "Oh my God, the whole room," like she was like, "I've got all goose pimples down my body." And I was like, "Oh, you do, yeah." And then I like literally had to be walk away a bit because I felt really tearful. But it was like those
I'm
moments
getting
where
them now.
yeah, like tiny little things that and you're just people will sometimes say things to you, and then when they do, it gives you that permission to know, oh, okay, that they want to talk about things a little bit more, or they want to explore. Because I understand there's some people on their soul journey, speaking of it, that they don't want to do it. They're so afraid. They're um so much resistance towards it, and they're like, nope, that's not for me, I don't want to do it. And I definitely can understand and relate to parts of that, but you I kind of just had no choice. When certain things happen, I just like when you sometimes you I personally just didn't have a choice. But I can empathize and see with people that are just not wanting to go there as well. I can totally understand.
Yeah, and I always say that I didn't do it overnight. It's been like a 10-year coming out the closet, but that actually I channel stuff, and when I hear like you need to say this now, there's
Mm,
like it's like my higher self is like, okay, say this. And I think that's what I love about the channeling process. Because don't get me wrong, I've done a lot of work around you can channel darker forces as much as you can channel higher light. But what there is, we have a higher consciousness that can come through and go. And it's kind of what my nan was talking about not being afraid, that when I follow that voice, my higher consciousness, I'm going to say or do things that myself wouldn't be brave enough to do. But then I'm like,
mm,
no, this is part of the mission. This is part of what is happening. And I feel like I can sense it. There's a ripple effect of a next level of awakening. Even
yes.
the guy I sat next to in the theatre yesterday, he was just chatting to me, and his friend was playing beautiful sax music and
Oh,
rapping with it, and it was like phenomenal.
nice.
And then he was
Yeah.
like, "Are you going to get up?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm saying a piece." And he was like, "Oh, I hope to hear it." And then I was talking about what I do, and I said I was a healer, and he was like, when I came off stage, he was like, "You smashed it." He said, "I
Uh,
knew you would when you said you were a healer." And I
yeah.
was like, what do you mean? And he was like, "Well, I just knew there was something different there." He was like,
Yeah.
I've had a few girlfriends that have got me into cards, tarot cards. And we were starting chatting about it. And
Yeah.
it felt like, because when you bring it into the room, you can open it up for everybody.
Yeah.
But there's times in my life when I've gone, oh, I'm all witchy behind the door, I'm all this. And then it got to the point when I realized my great grandfather was a famous medium, and he's called a fraudulent medium on Wikipedia. And I read so many articles about his work and realized that they were crucifying him. And it was like, he said on his deathbed, there was an article, he was like, they'd call me Lucifer. I don't chat with that. I bring through higher messages. And it's like, even the spiritual groups I go to, there loads of people are brought up, don't say you chat to spirits, that's the devil's work, that's this, that, and the other. And I always like to say to people, no, 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 there's people out there that can see both sides, and we're protecting you from that.
Mm,
So it's like whatever level of consciousness you can access, I think, we're, said it last night, but we're fighting for our lives down here. We all are. This
y-
consciousness, if we take it on, I'm not saying that people that attack women, murder women, I'm not saying that people that attack each other and cause harm, they've got responsibility. Then, you need to take responsibility for that.
yeah.
But we are programmed to let this self-hatred, anger of the other run rife. So we have to do the work, and it's spiritual work. It's spiritual work to raise your consciousness.
And I would even go as far to say, yes, it's spiritual work, but this has been done since the beginning of fucking time.
Yeah.
Like it's not a new thing. If you look at indigenous cultures from the Aboriginal people, from the Osage people, the original people in America, all of these different tribes of people would mix herbs and take things from the land and use it responsibly. And then if you had a cut or if a woman was pregnant, they'd know that you need to do this. And they'd listen to Mother Earth to know that this is what we need to do to make sure that we're working in unison. And there's beautiful birds that flock like
They're
literally
like, yeah, we are here.
yeah, like we're here,
Yeah.
like literally they know, and they would know that they would before it became commercialized of like ayahuasca and all of these different ceremonies, these people knew what to do. They never worried about what filters to use on social media. They never worried about like, have I got that Gucci handbag or whatever, whatever it is. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
call out different brands before I get sued. But it's a money making scheme. Having that extra handbag, lipstick, or whatever it is not going to make you happy. Having these things that effectively are toxic, they use child labor and no one is benefiting from it, minus a very small minority. The system wasn't designed to be like that. There is abundance beyond belief, and there is enough for everyone. I'm still I don't want to say I'm still in shock, but it is still deeply profound to me that in 2025, there are still world wars going on. There's still children starving. There's still uh, children being abused, people being abused, like all around the world, here and away. And seems to be the norm. And then we're like, everybody's so in the rat race. We're so programmed to be in the rat race. I've got to pay my mortgage, I've got to pay my rent, I've got to pay my bills. That we're never able to look at the bigger scheme of things, help each other. Because, like you said, we do want to. I'm you and you are me, no matter what carnation that I've come into in this life. And it's having that understanding of actually what can we do to help each other and to thrive,
Mm.
rather than being the survival mode whereby I feel like I need to step on you to get to where I need to get to. Because that's the old paradigm, the 3D paradigm of being like, there's only enough for me, so I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get what I need to get. Forget
Mm.
about you. But
Yeah.
really, it's about what most people, I would say, if we speak to our fellow man, whether it's going to be on public transport or wherever we are, most people want goodness for other people.
Yeah.
And that is the same in the spirit world. There are spirits that want good and those are the ones that you are good. But if you're fearful and gonna think that there's only going to be bad in that world, that's what's going to hold up to you. That's the mirror that's going to be held up to you.
Mm. And I think that, oh, 11:11, boom.
Yeah.
I feel like that's brought us full circle to that. What we try and do differently. I know me and you have worked together a lot, trying to mentor each other's work, co-producing, trying to make sure. I mean, you were the first person when I was writing Awaken, let's play back 2018, 19 something, that
Uh-huh.
you were writing, and we were like, let's make sure we keep going. And I was dog sitting at the time, and we met up and we were walking around and we were both going, I'm stuck. Are you stuck? I'm really stuck, really stuck, really stuck. And we were like, literally like, what can we do?
Yeah.
And it feels like it's come. circular because what I've felt, even though I've been like, whoa, it's a lot of work to take on to try and do a scratch night, but this scratch night has been working with my contemporaries, working with people who I support their work, have supported my work. And so we're meeting at a level to go, right, how can we support each other? What do you need? What can we do? How can we rise together? And there's something very special in my heart about that because I've had the gift of working like that on Awaken with the lovely Ellie Zegan and Laura Ballard, who were completely like that in it, supporting it, working together. And so I've seen the theatre industry from a very different angle and worked with Seymour as an ensemble, as a collaborative. And so I find that even when you're a solitary writer and a theatre maker, you're wearing all these hats, that yeah, my bottle of water is just we're supporting that. I've had these kind of earth angel collaborators to go, right, okay, how can we make sure that the best work comes out of each other and we can support it? So while I'm championing my story and championing the often silent spiritual voice in particular about my work, it's also like you have a big untold story. Sarah has a big untold story, and we're all bringing those forward. And that feels like a real blessing and an honoring. And then there's also that dimension of honoring your friend and honoring all women that haven't had their story told. And I'll bring in my Auntie Eileen now because I can feel her presence, who passed away last year, who was the shining light to me, was the person that I could talk to spirits about, was the person that was doing amateur dramatics, and she made it okay for me to be like this. So
Yeah.
I have a very special bond with my auntie, but that she had a book upstairs in her
Mm,
house that never got published. And
yes.
she, had a life where I'm sure she was a phenomenal actress. And she always said that her husband was the great one. He was funny. And she said he was a brilliant actor. And I thought, but I've heard you tell stories. I know what you're like. And so, yeah, there's a lot of silent stories out there. And I think the biggest thing I think we need to do is to bring our stories forward. And with saying that, I want to remind people that I even get scared of bringing spiritual activism stories forward. I'm like, oh, is the world ready to hear this? Will I get shut down? Can I say this? I'm
Yeah.
constantly pushing myself to do this, and it's actually been, I have a lot of support around me, and I'm really grateful for that, for
Mm,
you, and
mm,
for keeping me going too. So I
yeah.
think that's a wonderful celebration that we can all come together in this night, that we're actually in the Spain space sharing our work as well.
Yeah, I would agree. It's nice. It's nice to be working with people on this level and yeah, that align. Um, Going back to your original question of another reason of not wanting to be an actor, it was the understanding that sometimes there's that lack of integrity, and it's not with all, but it's the lack of integrity and lack of soul behind it. And I wouldn't have been able to name it before. And it's nice to be working with people um, who see that and understand that and feel that. So yeah, it's an exciting thing, and I'm excited to debut Trauma Bondage because this is the first time I'm sharing part of it, and yeah, and
Yeah,
get some your work and Sarah's work. I'm excited. It'll be a fun evening.
yeah, yeah. Fun and an emotional journey, no doubt. So
Yes,
to
yeah.
say, we'll be on at the Bread and Roses in London. It's a beautiful space that is seeded in activism itself. If you've been to the pub venue, yeah, it's got quite a history. I love the fact that it's called Bread and Roses. That has a heritage of the working class. And some people know I teach the rose lineage, and that's part of my activism. So it feels special on that level. But in the space, I felt, oh, there's this seed of activism and change. So I love what they do. And their last year, their night was called Raise the Vibrations. They're on about, raising the collective up. So it's going to be a really interesting, exciting night. So anyone in London, please do make it over there. I'd love to hear your responses on the work as we share it for the first time in its incarnation. And yeah, it's going to be quite a special night, and there will be some space to have Q&A and feedback. I particularly love that about going to see theatre, that the audience is as much a part of how we grow and change these, especially people, if you're representing the stories or their issues, it's like, come and tell us how you feel about them, how what affected you and what we could do better next time and how we could grow.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Anything else that you want to say, share, ask before we close up?
Just about trauma bonded. It's about three women, uh,
Yeah.
background from Martinique, which is in the Caribbean, French speaking. Um, and it's about um, we start to explore this secret that start to unravel and how it starts to affect their lives. And that's the bit that I'm sharing. So I look forward to seeing some of you there. And yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, good point. I talked the whole way without even saying what the witch, the bitch, the angel was about.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah,
So thank you for that reminder.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I always assume people, I never introduce myself by name. I always jump straight in. Uh,
yeah,
and I, go past the shows. But yeah, I'll just close by saying that this play that I'm bringing forward is a very multidimensional play about what I see is a transhuman timeline to reweave human DNA into a different consciousness, one merged with technology, which is very much happening in our times, and the fight for the soul's consciousness, because I believe that anything artificial put into the body will harm it and harm the soul's consciousness. So this play is about one woman, Lily, going through a spiritual awakening that is incredible and also mind-boggling to her, and her fight for not only the souls of humanity, but her own soul in many weird and wonderful ways. I won't say too much more as I don't want to ruin any of the storyline. But yeah, I'm really, yeah, I'm very excited about this version. It feels like it's finally come to life about what needs to be said in the times that we're in as well. So
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, and thank you for coming on this journey with me, and thank you for sharing so beautifully today, and yeah, opening up your heart. And I'm really looking forward to sharing space in theatre, my friend.
Exciting. One of many more.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Thank you, my love.
Thanks, love.
Bye.